bam, you're done.
Live streaming
So yeah, I'd like to keep it that way and wait for more user feedback and requirements and requests and so on and so forth.
Yeah, the feedback that I've gotten, most of it I think can be resolved just by getting the new update with rich text in it, being able to add little videos and photos and bold sections or embed a budget image or something like that is going to go a long way. But I also think that this is something we want that addresses what Mitch brought up about our docs. Because yes, having a very super simple way to add a project is great. And if you want to be a verified project, then we're setting the standards a little bit higher. So we need to communicate what those standards are. So I kind of feel like, yes, the process should stay simple, but the user guides should definitely get updated, which then goes to what Lauren's doing for the video. So asking the questions, what makes a good project description and how to fit that into what is currently, I think, what's our current project character limit? Description limit is only like 2,000 characters. So I've had 3 project owners tell me that wasn't enough for them to say what they needed to, and then providing hyperlinks to other information. If there's not an easy way to do that, they're trying to put that into the description. So yeah, I think we're seeing that because it's so easy, we're also getting a lot of junk projects and having to do more user maintenance on the back end of it. So that's something to think about too. So
yeah, I completely agree with that. And you just mentioned rich text editor, adding links, maybe unlimited characters count for the descriptions. Those are these minor updates that we're doing right now. And yeah, keep it quick and simple to create a project, but on the other hand, try to make it, well, not too hard, but make people think about it so that we don't end up with like junk projects, just, quickly created, like in 30 seconds or something. So yeah.
I think an easy way to implement that would just be, I mean, we already have this concept of a quality score. Just like when they get to the final step and they click save, we could check what that score is on that basis and have a minimum threshold, if that's something we want to explore.
Yeah, now it's a good idea. Maybe during the process, we could like have a small score kind of following you through that while you're creating a project, and say like, oh, you're not 20 out of 100 and then 30 out of 100 or something like that. So that like it gives you a feeling that, okay, I need to, write a better description. I need to add a better image, stuff like that. So I'm going to add it to the Figma right now. Okay, see you.
I love that.
Also, the 3-box verification. I'm hopeful that 3-box verification will help keep some of these nasty fake projects out, because you have to, at least verify some email, some Twitter account, some GitHub. And while it seems like a low barrier, I think that'll actually keep a lot of the crap project.
Totally. I was just going to say that if we even add the step where once they post it, they have to click something in their email for it to actually get loaded. Is that what we're talking about?
Exactly.
Yeah.
But I still think the quality score is a great one, and maybe we can, if we can figure out a way to increase their score as they add memes to their description, then I mean, that's it right there.
It kind of reminds me of Gitcoin, and as you're going up, and you have your trust bonus and the different ways that you can make your trust bonus higher. You can raise it by like this percentage by doing this or something like that. So you can kind of see as you go.
Yeah. And then like for how to, I was thinking about this last night, Lauren, how whenever you write a blog post, it's like the blog post is great, but it's not finished until it has what? Memes. So I was thinking to myself, like recommending, people make your project interesting and creative if you want to go above and beyond. Make your memes. It's a part of the the campaign that we have running. Mitch, did you want to say anything? So the last item we're going to talk about is the Give thing, but I just realized, is there anything that you wanted to bring up around extending the social media campaign that would be beneficial with this audience?
Well, yeah, I was just having the thoughts of like, what are we going to do to like really reach out to projects and to our audience about like the things that are actually happening on Giveth besides the technical stuff. So like here we realized that it's going to be a couple months until maybe we see like a Give token launch, and like how are we going to keep people engaged in like the work that we're doing or the projects that are getting involved with us, like for example like the Patagonia wildfire. And so in that respect, just kind of keeping up regular updates about new projects that are coming on board and like being able to highlight them and share them with the community. So that would just take the form of extending the Changemaker campaign till at least the Give token launch. So that we can just kind of keep the momentum with there, keep sharing stuff, have like more interesting updates we can share with the community until we have something more sizable, which will be when we launch our own token economy.
I talked to my friend Leela. She's one of the Gaia Gives partners, and she does a video call every week called Gaia Goals or the Gaia Hour, and projects that are verified get featured on this call. She's actually got a really nice little following. So we were suggesting that projects that get verified through the Giveth verification thing, she'd love to interview some of those. So a little bit of social media partnership engagement was something we talked about last night. Yeah.
And even as projects add updates on their page, as they keep adding updates, we could highlight some of those updates so you can keep up with like what they're doing, like the development updates, but it's just like the project updates.
For sure. But part of it too is like the exchange there. Like we have that thing where the projects promote us and then we promote them in return. So that's kind of like setting the minimum bar is, you know, we get something from them and then we give something in return and everybody wins.
Yeah, I really like what Ashley just said though, because I think it's really important that we start promoting updates on projects. I know I realized I'm guilty of that. I want to make sure we get some updates on projects that I've brought onto the platform. And so from extending the Changemaker campaign, there's new projects that list themselves that we promote. But bonus points if you create an update on and say what you've done or progress on your project. I feel like that's something that would be really beneficial to promote, is that ongoing presentation of what's happening with the project besides just the launch.
Yeah, but then how are you going to check that the projects have updated themselves? Are they going to come to you and say, hey, I have this update, or are we going to be actively looking on the site for updates?
No, yeah, I was thinking that's part of the campaign. Like they need to do that. They need to post their update and share it and use our hashtag.
Yeah, and even retroactive projects, like it's open for anybody, you know?
Yeah, that was just one of the thoughts I had around extending it. Okay, do you guys want to dive into the discussion around what would it look like for us to launch the token first as a non-transferable airdrop, and then what would be a process in the future? What does that change? How does that change things? Willie, I'm going to invite you to start.
I'm going to invite Griff to start because I think he proposed this, and I'd love to hear his thoughts. Thank you.
Basically, the problem is we really don't have the soft. Well, maybe just before this, Marco asked for a smart contract dev update, and there is one really promising candidate actually who worked for TrustSwap for 3 months and has, TrustSwap does a bunch of escrows and has a similar infrastructure, very different mission, but similar infrastructure to what Giveth wants to do. And so that is very interesting. Of the 7 applicants, he is by far the only one that fits the criteria. So we're going to set up an interview with him this week. That being said, we do not have the capabilities to do a lot of crazy smart contract stuff as Giveth right now. So we're kind of, the situation is we're just waiting for DAppNode to do their thing and then copy it. And that if we look at like from a higher level, we don't necessarily need to do complicated smart contracts to do the airdrop. We don't necessarily need to have complicated smart contracts to do givebacks. These are just issuing tokens. So if we wanted to, we could start with a non-transferable voucher. Tornado Cash did this, for instance, and other projects have done this where they do their distribution, but then they figure out, but it's non-transferable, and they figure out things later. The details and tests things, it gives them some time. And so we could do the airdrop and givebacks and start that process with a non-transferable token. And then when we actually have the vesting contracts all written up, tested by DAppNode, and the liquidity mining all figured out and battle tested by DAppNode, then we could just, everyone who has that non-transferable give token, we give them the global lockup token. Global, yeah.
Could we? I'm open to the idea, and but obviously there's some complications with the non-transferable token, like just from the user experience perspective, you got to at some point migrate your tokens, I assume. Have you thought about if we did? Could we do it without the non-transferable token? Kind of similar to like Curve, basically, where you're still retroactive. Like we could do the givebacks basically. But if it's non-transferable, like what's the difference in actually holding the token that you can't do anything with versus just knowing that you'll get granted a token, and as soon as the token launches, you'll just get more airdropped if you do donations on Giveth, basically? Do you think there's any advantage of doing it either way?
Mostly just for accounting. I mean, we could keep it in a spreadsheet, or like it would be like a Web3 way of being able to manage who has what. And the user wouldn't have to ever click a button if they didn't know that they had the non-transferable token. It's really just like, that's okay. We would just be using that non-transferable token for our own accounting, and then and then airdrop it the same. It'd basically just be like, okay, we'll take these two pieces and start doing them on our own time frame and give us that freedom, and then we will we'll just airdrop the stuff. The user wouldn't have to do anything.
Cool. Okay, so it's basically the same thing. It's just using the blockchain as a ledger instead of our own internal ledger. So we would basically
what did Curve do exactly?
Curve basically started their liquidity mining program before they launched their token. And then as soon as they launched their token, if you had been liquidity mining, if you had been providing liquidity before the token launch, then you got rewarded for it, basically. So it seems very similar to kind of what you're thinking here. I don't even know. They might have even had a non-transferable token, or they just kept track of it internally, or just did a snapshot, basically.
Yeah,
if the token is non-transferable, would they still be able to vote with it? Would they still be able to use it for other things, like government stuff?
People could vote with it. I mean, snapshot would work just fine.
So the benefits are basically being able to start incentivizing donations and stuff before we are ready to launch the token.
The big benefit is it gives us agency over our timeline and our roadmap. Right now, I feel like we are beholden to DAppNode, and we're just kind of waiting, right? And I don't know, that doesn't always feel motivating. And so it's more of just like, well, hey, guess what? We don't have to. Givebacks are a thing. The airdrop is a thing, and if we want to, we could kind of motivate the base and start generating donations using this future thing that we're going to do, but right now, and with accounting that people can trust.
How much time does it add to do the non-transferable token? Because it'll push back the regular token a little bit, and we're not quite ready. We're not quite ready to launch tomorrow the non-transferable version, even if we wanted to, right? We still probably want to do some of the givebacks, UI, UX, some of the stuff that we'd want to do anyways for the real token. So yeah, I'm wondering, maybe we don't have to necessarily decide today, but it could be probably useful to decide ahead at some point so that we can start doing some of the work for the non-transferable token. But yeah, do you have any idea how much work it is for the non-transferable token? How much work that would add?
Yeah, this is why I wanted to bring it up, because I could look into that, and I don't necessarily want to look into it this week because there's kind of a big Hatch Param token engineering commons thing this week. But if there is signal like this is a good idea, we should even consider it, then that's when it's like, okay, let's get a Notion doc. Let's take a look at what this means. What do we have to do, right? Does it add that much extra work? And start investigating these ideas. I don't think it would add extra work. Like we have the rgive DAO, and we can basically just do what the common stack does, where our DAO just issues a non-transferable token, the CStack token, and it just goes to people, and then that's it. Like the DAO would just issue the token, and yeah.
It feels like we might even save time, right? Because I think there's probably some challenges we'll face that we didn't realize until we get there, right? And if we're waiting, if our timeline is pushed back out of our control like that, then in some way, the sooner we actually start walking down the path, the sooner we'll identify these unknown unknowns, right? So yeah, I mean, there may be some extra work to be done in total, but like in terms of like actually launching, it would almost certainly really speed things along, I would say.
What I would say is for sure it'll speed along adoption, because people will be like, oh, Giveth is having a token, right? And then they're like, oh, I want to donate on Giveth. And there will be I think it would greatly increase our donation flow. But that's also something a little scary, right? Are we ready for that?
Are we ready for Solidity devs banging our door down saying, choose me, choose me?
Yeah.
Yes, yes, we are. So I really like the taking control of our own destiny side of this conversation. As we saw with launching Giveth 2, it was all dev focused, and then we brought in the comms team and realized all the other things we wanted to have in order to go along with the launch. And now we're talking to Marco about redoing some designs, launching a new look for Giveth, being able to actually manage that timeline a little bit more, and to say we're going to launch the Give token as a non-transferable one at first, and then have the new design come out. That feels like something that if we can control that and have a working group focused on that, then it doesn't matter when DApp node finishes and when we do the second part of it. This is kind of the big non-dev thing that we could do a lot with. And it feels like a great place to put our focus. One of the questions that I have is, so the goals and incentives behind having the Give token. I know we mentioned voting, but some of the dev things I think of are how are we staking behind projects? So when people get these tokens, can they use them to say which projects they want to receive match funding? Or like, I know that's a few steps ahead, but I would want to be thinking about this right now. Like, if we're going to give out these tokens, what can you do with them? So maybe that would be the next thing to talk about, it as to what we could do with the DApp once people have these tokens.
Yeah.
And that's
it definitely opens a wider space for marketing to start talking about the plans and what we're doing, you know.
Mm-hmm.
But it's not something that we will decide on this week, I would say. It's something that we need to write a plan for if we're going to do it and analyze more details.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Anybody else have any thoughts or questions about what a non-transferable Give token would look like? Awesome. All right, the other thing I have on here for us to just chat about, I think that's really it. We don't need to dive into DApp node. We're gathering the addresses for the last part of the airdrop. What about, is there anything we can talk about around dev prioritization? We've got the sprint planning coming up on Wednesday. Anything we can celebrate around project verification, the scoring and reporting a project?
I think on the community call yesterday, one thing that came up around project verification and prioritizing things with the dev is the 3-box integration. Yeah, and just just automating the verification a bit more. I think Kai also suggested looking into ceramic, but I think 3-box was the primary one we were looking at. So yeah, that would be one for dev priorities.
Yep, that's definitely message received, I guess, for Wednesday.
I guess the other thing that kind of came up during project verifications is around 501c3s and how we go about verifying whether they're actually a 501c3 or they just sent us a photo of some paper. And depending on the country, we're going to have to find a way to verify. So I'm trying to go through and figure out, like, either we create like a database of, you know, if they're in this country, it's where you can verify and where all the sites are and stuff. But that was another thing that came up throughout the last verification party.
All right. Yeah, Griff and I kind of chatted about that a little bit last night, that we don't want to go into that level of complexity. Is there any reason from a Giveth perspective that we need to verify them? Because if we're going to verify them, that would mean we'd want to make a badge.
Yeah, like for example, when on our last verification party, when Ronnie submit his project, like all the nonprofit documents that he submit were in Spanish because they're based in Costa Rica. And so then we were looking online, like, okay, what's the organizing body in Costa Rica that like determines who the official nonprofits are, and do we like send them an email with the documents to verify? Like, is there some way of automating that, or even just automating like translating the document so we can be sure? Because you know, the larger Giveth gets, we're going to get projects probably from Germany and, you know, Mexico and Canada, and so we're going to recognize that applications may come in different languages. Yeah, and that's like a pretty primary way for us to verify the credibility of a project. So it feels important.
Yeah, and then if they would get a badge, they're like verified with like a, you know, 501c3 or like a nonprofit star or something, right? So there would be like 2 different badges.
Yeah, I mean,
personally, I have just go ahead.
Go ahead, Danny.
Griff. I just have I have slight contention in me with saying that because a project is verified as a nonprofit with a governmental organization, it makes them a more credible recipient than somebody doing good work on the ground that hasn't done that. So I haven't heard Giveth say that before, that we consider a project more valuable if they have this verification. For example, a DAO isn't going to have that, but a well-organized and governed DAO, to me, is just as valuable, if not more, in some cases, than having to jump through the hurdles of participating with the government. So that's my personal resistance to the statements that I just heard, and I'm wondering why Giveth needs to know if they're a nonprofit. Is that important to us, or can we put that onus back on the project and say, if you're a governmentally recognized organization in any way, you're responsible for communicating that? Like I told Max that for Gaia Gives. I was like, put your own badge up in your banner, make a custom banner that says your qualification so people see that up front. I'm just wondering.
It's about trust, right? I mean, sorry, Griff. I mean, I just quickly want to say it's about trust, and, you know, maybe an acknowledgement from a government has got a lower score than an acknowledgement from another organization that is trusted, or person that is trusted on Giveth. And I mean, perhaps in the future we can work on that, like some kind of like web of trust, right? That like, but I hear you, and it's not ideal. But I imagine that it's just coming from the place of trying to find some established way of of creating trust, right?
Yeah, I think the reason it was originally put in is just like, hey, what do you have? What skin in the game do you have? How much of a real project are you? Like, are you a nonprofit? Do you have like, you know? And if someone else kind of said, oh yeah, this is a nonprofit project, and they have like some sort of status, then that kind of means that they're a little more serious than someone who just like threw something up. So it's not necessarily like it's like a nice to have, or it makes it easier to trust for the verification parties, right? But there's kind of like two questions. Like, do we still want to ask them for it to verify the project? I think it helps. I think it's like, oh, well, okay, they even have a nonprofit paperwork. Oh, geez, okay, these guys are really trying to be a nonprofit. Cool. It's a little bit easier to verify them in the verification party. The second question is, do we want to display this on the front end? And to what ends do we want to display it? And what's the point? Like, it may be useful for someone who cares about donation tax deductions and wants to get like their money back. But I'm actually kind of like, ooh, this could mess on the front end, because like first we have to not only say that they're a verified project, but also what country their nonprofit status is in, and like, does the user pay taxes in that country? And it's just a lot to communicate to the users, and I don't know that our core base cares if it's 501c3. Like, I haven't seen anyone on Gitcoins really push this like, hey, I'm a 501c3 and let me get you a tax deductible receipt for donating to me, so
Yeah. The only reason I see it being valuable in the long term as something to really think about is being able to set that flag is also because if people do want to choose to receive a tax deduction for their donation, then it disqualifies them from the givebacks program, because then we have to do a whole bunch of other math. So even just a flag as to whether a project accepts tax deductible donations, in order to set that flag that they do accept it, they would need to submit proof that they're a registered nonprofit in a country. So from long-term planning, I see the benefit of having a flag, because it helps us say give backs yes or give back later. And then the other thing is, if they do want tax donations, then SDG Impact has to have purview over the wallet that the project is created with. So it creates another step of administration up in the front on what wallet is used to create the project. So I do see us going that way. So I want to be thinking about it right now and making sure we don't put a barrier up inadvertently, and we are preparing for it. But like when I filled out the project verification application, I said, yes, we are a nonprofit. And then I actually couldn't finish until I uploaded that document. So we're making it a little bit of a barrier right now. I was like, oh, I can't do this right now on my phone because I don't have that document ready to upload. So I missed the verification party this week.
Well, it does say at the beginning of the
Anyways.
form that if you are a verified nonprofit, that you will need to have that documentation to complete the form. So there is kind of like a warning, I guess.
Yeah, I learned a lesson.
Yeah. I think really valuable thoughts. So I love your perspective on it, Danny. But I hear the reasoning for why we'd want to include it as a step in the verification flow. I think as long as we're making it clear that it's not a requirement in the verification flow, I imagine it's pretty clear that it's not required. And I think it is a valuable thing to track, just because it is the status quo, right? Like right now, a lot of people do want to donate to projects that support tax deductions. So I think we should support it, but I think we should not, in our UI, make it seem like a verified nonprofit is better than a project that's not verified or that's not registered as a nonprofit. I think there's a balance we can strike there, right? Like you can let people search for those projects and you can see it on their profile, but it's not like, it doesn't have to necessarily convey that those projects are superior anyway.
Yeah, I mean, ultimately, I'm just trying to safeguard the accessibility of our platform and funds to the people in places that need it most and have the most difficulty clearing some of these hurdles. That's all.
I think the other thing that arose on our last verification party, especially from the projects that did not submit more thorough documentation like the 501c3 stuff, which I hear all the angles. I'm not like leaning towards one side or not. I'm just more looking for solutions to things that are rising. you know, sometimes it's obvious that a project that submits is truly a 100% like not-for-profit organization, and like understanding the funds that they're looking for are just going to like support operations to keep that nonprofit running. But then there's other instances that seems like, okay, maybe there's like a product or a service that they're selling, or maybe this is like an organization, for example, like an eco-village that has aspects to it, like educational retreats that are for profit, and they have some like business aspects, but then there's aspects of it that are not for profit, or they are doing good in the world, but is it 100% not for profit? So sometimes that's hard to determine with the you know, like with the limited information we're able to find out. And so it felt like, you know, if someone is like a registered 501c3, that someone else has verified that for them.
What's our stance on that?
Sure.
So if a project's not allowed to be